Hello, everyone. I wanted to update you on the what you can expect this week here at on my channel, City Tutoring. I will continue with the series of on logic. I wanted to continue with the series on logic, but I wanted to make this video specifically for a lot of I am blessed because a lot of people watching this channel are college students, and a lot of the advice that I give is geared towards college students. I just had a very good dinner and I decided to make this video because it's something that needs to be said. And I see a lot of college students struggling with this, but particularly our young men. Young college men are struggling in America today. So I decided to make this video to I was going to make it into one video. I was going to do a whole video on this message and proofs. But a lot of you have asked me, a lot of you have told me that you'd rather me, if I'm going to give a advice on something, you'd rather me do it in a separate video. And that's fine. I'm always receptive to feedback. You know, you can disagree with me. I'm not made out of jelly. I'm not a snowflake. And if you disagree with me, the only thing I ask for is that you give me very good reasons as to why you disagree with me. And most of the people who disagree with me, they don't really have good reasons. But it's really late at night, and relatively late, and I decided to make this video as a sort of as advice for the young men who watch this channel, because I know a lot of you are struggling, and there are things that need to be said, especially in today's America. So the title of this message is what sort of men you should avoid and shun at the college level. And gentlemen, I just want you to know the company you keep will shape the man you become. Proverbs chapter 13, verse 20 in the King James Version, the best version of the Bible, says, "He that walketh with wise men shall be wise, but a companion of fools shall be destroyed." So I want to take an honest look at the types of men you ought to avoid if you want to grow into strong, respectable future leaders of some sort, and I hope you all do. The first type of man that we see a lot of these days is what used to be called the lazy bum. If he's not a hard worker, don't let him be your companion. Laziness, the lazy loafer, is contagious, and a sluggard will drag you down faster than you can pull him up. You want to surround yourself with men who grind, hustle, and honor the dignity of honest labor. We have an America today that glorifies the bum. In fact, a lot of people nowadays, they justify that as a lifestyle, since in many cases the taxpayers end up picking up the tab. It's disgraceful. You know, there were no beggars in 19th century America or 18th century America. Begging was unheard of, and actually was a foreign concept. Only foreign aliens begged in the United States. We used to have something called the Great Protestant Work Ethic. Our ancestors were actually very hardworking Protestants. They would not have ever imagined begging for anyone. You had the pioneer spirit, which we have lost. And laziness was very much frowned upon by our ancestors. So I would like to bring back the spirit of enterprise and thriftiness to promote hard work and a hard-nosed attitude towards finance and money. But really, if you look back on the history, there was no such thing. Begging was unknown in the America of the 18th and 19th century. In fact, it was only brought in the 19th century by when foreigners started to fill in the big cities in America and started to import some of their ways. Doesn't it sound familiar? We see some of that today. The second type of person that you need to shun if you're a college student is what I call the job hopper. And you want to beware of the man who cannot hold down a job. A man who treats work like a game of musical chairs will eventually leave his responsibilities and his friends. They will leave you high and dry. You want to stick with the men who commit, show up, and stay dependable. You want to avoid being around men in your classes who shirk responsibility, even when they can afford not to work. And that's not the point. The point is to be productive. I've had a lot of young men who tell me, well, I don't need to work because my father pays for everything. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with wealth. What I'm trying to get at, though, is that you still need to foster very good habits. Because at the end of the day, the reason your father or your grandfather or your grandmom became wealthy was because someone in down the family line or up the family line was actually productive. So you need to keep up that habit. The third type of person we should shun is the financially reckless. If a man doesn't pay his bills on time or lives paycheck to paycheck due to his poor choices, I'm not talking about the man who genuinely struggles. I'm talking about the loafer. If he's the type of man who does that, he's not a man you should trust. When you have a responsibility like that, it can ruin not just his future, but yours as well. If you're foolish enough to follow his example. There are so many young men in America today who pay for things they don't really need on a whim. Can you imagine that? On a whim. What kind of fathers would they be for their children if they were fathers? Then you want to avoid the rude jester. And that is a man who's impolite to professors, parents, classmates, or anyone else, and it reveals his lack of character. Manners matter. And when you have a disrespectful attitude, it has no place in a man of integrity. If a man doesn't respect others and show decorum, he'll never respect you or your goals. And if you're a young lady and you're watching this video and you know exactly what I'm talking about, a man who doesn't know how to respect others, what kind of respect do you think you're going to get from a man like that? That's a fact. And now I'm not talking about, humor. I'm all for humor once in a while. If you want to make a joke, that's okay. But there's a difference between a good joke. There's a difference between humor when humor is called for and being the court jester, being a clown. We don't want clowns here at City Tutoring. We want people who take their studies seriously. And there's a lot of people today, there's a lot of weak men, when they don't understand the debate, when they don't understand the point you're trying to make, they go for the easy, the one-line, stupid sort of, they call it humor. There's nothing funny about it, but they think it's funny. They go for the one-liner or they make an obscene comment. You know who they are, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. The next type of man that you should avoid is the idle. There are men who are full of themselves and they spend more time loafing than doing, and that is a man to avoid. Pride and idleness breed failure. You want to surround yourself with men who are teachable and who stay busy building their futures and paying attention to their studies. You don't want to have people who are idle around you. And there's a lot of that going around in America today. You have people who are idle, and they are also what I call disgruntled. Have you ever seen a disgruntled man or woman? But since my message is primarily to the men, a disgruntled man will never bring you any kind of success. A disgruntled man, in fact, in many cases, will actually commit murder in the worst case scenarios. We just saw an example recently like that with I don't want to name him because I don't want to give any terrorist, I don't want to give any murderer propaganda on my channel. But you can look them up. There are many men in America today who, because they blame other people for their failures, they commit murder. They think that by committing murder, they are actually doing a heroic act. And they belong to the devil. And these are people who you should shun. And if you don't like what I'm saying, you don't belong on my channel, because I speak truth to God. And I am here to denounce what I see as the wrong kind of attitude of mind. The other type of men that you should always shun is the church. And I know a lot of people now are going to disagree with me, and that's okay. Like I said, I'm not made out of jelly. You can disagree with me. I'm not going to kill you. I'm not like others who have a meltdown when there's some kind of disagreement. I wasn't raised that way. I'm from another generation. I don't melt when someone disagrees with me. But I tend to avoid men who avoid any kind of structure in their life. I don't want to be around people who, for example, on Sundays avoid church. The church avoider. If you are around men who are not involved in church, I'd like you to steer clear. A man who avoids God's house has no foundation for his life. You have friends who lead you away from spiritual growth, and those are not your friends at all. They are stumbling blocks. You want friends who go to church on Sundays, not take drugs, and commit all sorts of reprehensible vices. And again, I know a lot of people are going to push back on this comment. I know a lot of people are going to say, well, I know someone who doesn't go to church and he's a good man. That's not the point. The point is that most successful men in life have a kind of structure. And I want you to see the evidence of that. There's a common thread among a lot of men who are unchurched, undisciplined, and unruly. And most of the time, I'm not saying there's no universal law, but most of the time, the sort of men who are undisciplined don't end up doing very well in life. And that is fact. And that is a lesson of history. The other type of man that you should avoid, these are the guys who are the campus slackers. If you are around men who are flunking classes or making excuses, I don't want you to align yourself with them. Success always shows in your dedication, and dedication builds men. You want to avoid the ones who are more interested in partying or procrastinating than preparing for the future. Now wait, there's nothing wrong with a good party. In fact, when I was an undergrad at Columbia University, there were some good parties there. But the main difference, and one of the things I actually really liked about Columbia University, despite being a very godless university in many ways, people took their studies very seriously. So people knew how to study hard and party hard. And by the way, being in a good party, you don't have to have drugs in a good party. There are many good parties that you could be a part of that don't have a lot of vice. But what I'm trying to say is the type of man who makes partying their lifestyle choice at college. That's not something you want to be surrounded by. The other type is what I call the weakling. Now, I'm not talking about people who bench press 300 pounds, but every man should strive to take care of his body. I know a lot of you fellows, you pump iron. In fact, I know a lot of ladies pump iron. I certainly don't want to be around those kind of ladies. Can you imagine being with a lady if you're a man? Can you imagine being married or having a girlfriend who practices judo or whatever and can throw you across the room? I wouldn't want to be surrounded by such kind of ladies like that. And I know some of you fellows, you pump iron, you have muscle, and you show your tattoos. I find tattoos to be something that should actually be covered up. We live in a society today where so many people have tattoos. I don't even want to see them around me, but I know they're a reality, unfortunately. And it is a reality. They have become a reality for a variety of factors. One of them has to do with a lack of discipline. It shows a lack of discipline. But I'm talking about every man should take care of his body in some way. A weak man physically often lacks the discipline to stay strong in other areas. You want to gravitate towards those who respect their health and can step up when the moment demands it, even in defense of others. We have a world, of overcomplicated gadgets. And to me, there's something really trustworthy about a revolver, isn't there? 6 shots, no excuses, far less likely to jam, much like a real man. Ladies, can you imagine dating or marrying a man who cannot even swing a baseball bat at home? If someone sneaks in the night to commit murder or to harm your family in some way, can you imagine being with a man who can't even swing a bat, can't even shoot a gun? That's not the kind of man. I mean, I'm a man. I wouldn't want to be around those kind of men, for sure. Again, I'm not talking about you have to have. I don't have muscle necessarily. I don't lift weights, but I'm talking about dexterity. I'm talking about at least in my case, I know how to shoot a gun. I know how to shoot guns. I'm very much a defender of the Second Amendment. I know you Europeans watching me, you don't like the Second Amendment, and that's too bad. I certainly wouldn't want the European system in America. I certainly wouldn't want that. But I know some of you, you get scared when you see a gun, and that says a lot about you more than it does about guns. But, at the end of the day, gentlemen, you are a product, the kind of company you keep. You are influenced by who is around you, who you hang around with. You have to choose wisely. If your circle is filled with lazy, rude, incompetent, undisciplined men, you will end up just like them. But if you surround yourself with men who are hardworking, respectful, disciplined, and godly, you'll find yourself growing into the kind of man that others will respect and that you can be proud of. And I mean pride not in a sinful way, I mean pride in a good way. So I hope this helps. And if this video was helpful, please let me know in the comments. And if this was helpful, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you.